You got it. Recordings in progress, and we are live. We got some people coming on in. Got my chat. I'm gonna get my QA. I got it all. All right. If you got questions, you type it in the chat. You can talk. I may have answers. Whatever you need, we'll find it. Well, not whatever you need. Within reason, the things that you need, if it's decisions related. We'll do our best to get you the resources and the answers you look for. I need to create some type of story or tagline to like open up or something. I think that'd be pretty cool. Like in a world, I need like, a Don LaFontaine voice of like, in a world where people have questions during the week. This is Marvin. In case it says James. Cool. Great. That doesn't clear it up at all, but got it. I have a 50% chance to get it right. So, that's so funny. All right. Any questions? Exception handling at the project level. All right, is this James or is this Marvin? All right, I'm gonna say try this one. Allow to talk. Is this Marvin or James?
This is Marvin.
Oops, I got the wrong one. Oh no, it was Marvin. Did you ask that
Okay, you
question?
got the right one.
Oh, okay.
That's my question.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll do it. Marvin.
Hey, sorry for interrupting. Marvin, did you use the link that it got sent you? This
Yeah, and it
or
tried
James?
to want me to log in. I was gonna get back with you later.
Okay. Yeah, because I re-registered you last week, so
Right.
it should be your own name. Okay,
When
I'll
I
look at it.
clicked on it, then it asked me to log into something, and I wasn't sure what credentials and
All
We
right.
can. Well,
Yeah, we'll look at it later.
we'll help you that off the offline. But let me. I'll answer your question because I think
exactly.
it's a really good question. I actually was talking with a fellow colleague with this earlier today. So let me kind of share you guys with what was kind of learned by it. Is So if I go into, right, oh, sure, I'll use my, or let's just use the new project so I can just mess around with it. We do have in the project hub, right, the area where you can do, I think it's in health and then error handling. And basically what you can
Right.
do here is you can have an error handling flow that says, hey, if this flow errors out, it will just run this flow, right? And so
Right.
it's a project level error handling, right?
Okay.
So this is something you could use. We still recommend, there's a couple things to be aware of interactions with this though. So if you do have a flow that is configured for this, if you run a scheduled job, and let's say that scheduled job errors out, what will happen is it's going to, in version 9, will run this flow. Seems like that's what you want. But the problem is then your scheduled job will never say that it actually errored out in the actual queue menu when you look at the
Okay.
scheduled jobs, right? And so, which is kind of misleading because it ran that flow. Now, your error handling flow may have an assignment that sends it to you, something that may not be that big of a deal, but that's something to be aware of if you do choose this route. The other
Okay.
thing to be aware of is inactive form flows, right? In forms,
Mhm.
similar issue where you won't be able to easily detect that error because when it errors out, it's just going to run this exception handling flow and have the perception that there is no errors when there actually is. So it's a couple
Right.
minor things that we internally have DTs for, and we're working to trying to get those alleviated in later versions of 9. But those are current interactions that you'll just need to be aware of. So in the absence of that, what we currently recommend people do is if we go back here and I go back into flows, is still in your processes always think about error handling and do it from this menu where you have a catch exception step.
Right. Just do it within the flows. Okay.
Exactly, and then have
Okay.
the handle
Just
errors
for
flow.
now
That'll be the best.
until y'all get the
Mm-hmm.
upgrades done to it. Okay. All right.
Yep,
Works for
exactly.
me. I
Mm-hmm.
just James and I knew it existed, but figured we'd ask before we jumped in,
Of course.
head first.
Of course. We always love the questions.
All right, I'm good. Thanks.
My pleasure. All right, James. I think you have one. The real James, not the Marvin James. Um, how do form steps and form events work? I actually don't know what you mean by that, so I'm going to allow you to talk, James. What do you mean by that? Form steps, form events work?
When you're creating forms, those are two form controls that I don't know how they work and I can't find any documentation. on.
Oh, those are 2 steps. Oh, really? Let's take a look at it.
Yeah,
Form.
like if you form step, and you'll see that there's a form control called form step. Well, you gotta be building a form.
Oh,
Right.
wait. Oh. You're not talking about in the flow designer. It's in the,
Yeah, form design.
really? Okay, I've never heard of this. Let's go ahead and find it out. Forms.
So
Create a
they look
form.
interesting, but I don't know how to use them. I'm trying to
Stuff
do
and
different things to
form
mimic what we do
stuff.
and just trying to get more tools in my skills here.
Sure. So we got form. Form steps. What are form steps? Static list items. Data 1. Let's explore together. Data 2.
Yeah, I did that. And I
Data
just don't know what they
3.
do.
And data 5. 4. 3, 2, 1. That looks interesting. And then what was the other one? It was form step. There's just
Event,
form.
event, type in event.
Oh, event.
Yeah,
Event
like the
button.
event button, like looks like it's similar to the sub dialogue stuff, but I don't know what
Oh,
those do.
sweet. That one I know. I'll answer that one last because that's one's gonna be a quick answer. Let's explore this because this looks fun. Okay, let's add a button. Button. I can't spell it. Put that in there, and then let's just add it to a flow. And we'll say this is the test flow, test form, step, step, step. My goodness, step form stuff. And then what we'll do is let's show this form. Let's run this. I wonder what the data type is. 'Cause that's typically my route. So whenever I
Mhm.
encounter something new, here's what I always do. Because I always try to figure out what is I don't think this is the right form. What is the data that I get out from the step? So
Right.
this one outputs a string. So if I do this, I'm clicking on this. This is a weird interaction thing. And what was the one that outputted? There was an input. Oh, selected item. Can I do a constant? And we'll say data 1. What does that do?
It's got that
Interesting.
little,
Okay. So selected does something. So it's these static list items. I want to know form steps. I want to know what's the input of this thing. So it's just a list of strings. So I can set the form steps. Okay. Okay. Then I'm wondering if there's okay, here's something we could do. Let's view. Behavior, there's no view. I'm wondering if this is done where I could say, right, let's say I have, form 1, form 2, form 3. And then let's say I create another form. And for sake of simplicity, let's go back to forms. Let's duplicate this. And we'll say this is copy form stuff from stuff, which is perfect. And that's just a list of strings, so that would be fine. We go back to the flow. We run this. I first got to pick, and then we're going to do the copy. And then we run this. And then what I'm going to say is I'm just going to copy these inputs. Probably would get it from some dynamic list or something. And then the selected item, I'm just going to say is form 1. And then I'm going to say the selected. It's form 2. And I'm just curious to see what that interaction looks like. So if I do this, I debug it. So it's selected. And then if I go here, then it's show this one for it. It's like you can select it. It's like, I wonder if it's a way to track where someone's at in the forms. Like kind of so, because it has that thing. But I don't know if there's like a
Yeah, I just don't know what
clickable.
it does, because you could track things anyway.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't know if it's just an old one, um, inside,
Hmm.
an old step inside the,
I'm really curious, because it looks like it could be cool. Looks like, I don't know what that's, it just, I can't figure out what the functionality would be or would have been.
yeah, let me ask the team. Let's see what they think.
The icon looks like a timeline, but who knows?
That's
It
what
is,
I'm
it's very
thinking.
similar to it, but it doesn't do anything. Doesn't move
Right.
you along, doesn't do anything with it.
Yeah, and it feels like the folder timeline would be better for that. Or there's like a, what's the one, Gregory, what's the one we use in Lending app? Like, isn't there like a timeline?
Yeah,
There's a
I
vertical
think
and a
it's a
horizontal.
horizontal timeline or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. Oh,
That's
yeah.
the only one that I know. Yeah, to me that one makes
Yeah,
more
I've
sense
used
because
that
that
before.
one, yeah, you can set a folder ID or you can define the states and then
Right.
current state by data name. This makes a lot more sense. And so you got like data 1, data 2, data 3, right? And then you can have it connected and you can say which
Right.
one people are at.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like it
Yeah.
is. It's just an older version of that, but I'll ask internally to see what that one is. The other one, though, this one's pretty easy. I do know this one. This one allows you, the event button
Uh-huh.
allows you to tie an active form flow or, yeah, an active form flow based on a click, right? So I can say, hey, I want to create an active form flow that says, say hi to James and James's alter ego, right?
Mhm.
And so I can say on click of this event button, I want to
Right.
run this flow. And so I can say show pop up, if I can spell that, pop up. And this would be hello. And then specify user, I'm just gonna specify it for me, so I don't have to worry about any contextual user change issues. And this would be hello, James and alter ego. And then if I save this, and then we go here, then I close, and then I debug, what you'll see here is now, if I keep, I'm clicking on it, it will
Mhm.
run that notification for as many times as I want. There is, how I've used this is a fun thing. It's in version 7, so it's a little old. But on one of my channels, I actually built a, let's go to videos. I built a calculator in decisions and it's literally utilizing, those are all event buttons. And they have active
Mhm.
form flows tied to them to kind of create like a calculator screen where you can calculate, clear, and do all the fun stuff. So if you're curious on like use cases, I'll put this in the chat. It's kind of a nice little goofy example.
I like it.
On like what
Cool.
it looks like. It is a little long, so I would just skip to the end so you can just see what it works like. So around like, like what is it? 43. So you can see me like using the clear screen and debugging it. But yeah, that's what event buttons are used for. If you have a action you want to tie to an active form flow tied to on click button.
I see. So, um, but it's not, why do you say active form flow when it's just a flow behind that button? Is that just what it really is?
'Cause that's one of the ways you could do it. You can also run other things, I think, on it. The reason why I say an active form flow is because you wouldn't use a sub dialog flow on it, and because the sub dialog flow is already a button.
Oh, I see. You would use the active form flow and say on click of that event button.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
yeah. So on click of that event,
Gotcha.
but yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the only, flow,
So you're
yeah,
basically just forcing a flow to happen on a click of a button instead of some other trigger.
exactly. It's another, yeah, exactly. It's another way to do a trigger.
And
Okay.
something I wish to add on top of that is because you're using an active form flow, which you can run multiple triggers for, you can now set a form that runs if so and so happens in your form and if they just click a button if you need that functionality.
There you go, yeah. You can tie both.
Okay. 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 Cool. Cool. So the raise event, that stuff, the only thing they can do is click it to, it has to be a combination or just a straight click. Yeah. Okay.
You got it.
Okay. Cool. Oh, does anybody else got questions?
I'll open it up. Jeremy, VT, any questions or just here for the show as you have lunch? In the words of my great colleague, we're just lunching and learning. Let's see, we got Shane Key. Shane, do you have any questions? Let's see, I don't think so for right now. So James, go ahead and ask your second question.
I just,
As we wait.
that's something I'm currently working on. I've got some drop down lists. I've created a sub dialogue for
Mhm.
like looking up suppliers. So they just hit like a sub dialogue button and it brings up, pops up another little page to enter your vendor ID and country code and it does all the lookups for you. The
Mhm.
thing is that vendor table has like, if you bring it all back at once, has 20,000 rows on it, which,
Ooh,
I mean, it can take just a second. It's not like terrible. It's not like it spins for a minute, but it can take a couple seconds to load that drop down. Now, I'm just thinking, what's the best way to do that where, because I did see in the projects thing where the example labs where I think it was there, that they have where you can start keying in and it'll start doing the fetch on as you're keying in. And like when you get to the third character, it'll start populating the drop down, something like that. But I don't
oh,
think that would work for this because those vendor IDs, they all start with 0000000. So if they
yeah,
start, typing one in, it's going to bring it all back anyway. Um, I'm just wondering
sure.
if there's a way you can buffer that so that as they hit the drop, so the page just loads faster, I guess is all I'm
Mm,
saying, because it's going to load that drop down in the background on the AFF anyway on the page. I got it on
Sure.
page start. So
Are you how for well, so we can tackle this two ways. The first thing we should be thinking about, how are you fetching that data? You're just using a fetch entity step or are you using a query integration?
both. Well, no, I'm using a fetch entity. I use a query integration to get the data initially, and that will refresh it periodically.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going back to our source database every time I hit the drop down. There's a
Okay.
database structure in Decisions that I've loaded all that data into.
Okay, cool. I gotcha. So then here's the thing, because then if you still fetch entities the data structure decisions, that's still a lot of database chatter happening.
Uh-huh.
Just on the installation database that decisions is on.
Sure, right.
I think two ways, and I think Gregory might know more about this, so I might punt it over to you, Gregory. But the first thing you can do, and anyone on the decision side, correct me if I'm wrong. First thing you can do is, let me go ahead and show you a couple things. Inside, if you're fetching a lot of data, what you can do is you can fetch the cached outcomes. So if you go to fetch entities,
Right.
and there is where's the outcome? Outcomes, and then you
Mhm.
can say what is it? Cache outcomes, and you
Right.
can say per user or per global basis. And what this does is it will then cache and take that data and store it in memory for a certain period of time, and only will refresh that fetch after that time span has expired. So we actually do this on one of our really poorly designed reports that we're trying to update. That is a flow source reporting for 100,000 records. And when
Mhm.
we finally load it, then we utilize this to cache it. So it loads a little bit faster for them. So this could be one way. Is there a particular, and the second thing you can do is there a particular field that you're kind of utilizing a where clause on or filtering that data on?
Yeah, there's a country code that has to be, that corresponds to that vendor. So it's not going to bring back all 20,000, but it's like if you
Hmm.
put in USA, it's going to bring back the majority of them.
Sure, yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, that's not really helping. Yeah, because that's the only thing you can really filter it on because they need to be able to look up and any vendor that we have
Okay,
on file.
gotcha.
Yeah, if
Okay.
there were other things I could do, certainly I would try to narrow that down before we even get there, but that's just not
Hmm.
the case with this.
Gotcha. Okay. Because then I think probably the fetch to the outcomes and caching that might be a little better. There's also indexing where you can index based on that country code. Maybe that might
Gotcha.
give some performance on that.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering
But
how that works. So is that done when I build the data, when I go into the database structure, I guess I'd select an index on that. It's going to be vendor ID, I guess.
I
Well,
believe so. So let's just create a database structure here and let's talk
yeah.
about it. So database stuff, and then I'll say this is prop 1, prop 2, prop 3. Then if I click on a data member, I think there is create database index right there. And so you can then say this property is, you want to index on it.
So what if you wanted, what if your index was, I guess if it's on two fields like you, because the fetch ends up being on the two fields, the country and the event. So I could put an index on both of those and it will, the fetch will utilize both those indexes when you do the where, I guess the filter clause, which ends up being a where clause.
I think that's where we might get into a little hairy stuff. That one, I'm not sure. I'd have to test that out. I can take it offline and test.
Yeah, I'll test it. I'll test it, see
Okay.
if it works. I mean, I can just run some stuff without the index at all, put the index on, rebuild the database,
Yeah.
structure, and then.
I was gonna say I can't answer that. You can create more than one index to be able to run on the database itself in order to do that fetch. That
Okay.
is definitely possible. If you're using SQL, I'm trying to remember exactly if it's the clustered or the non-clustered ones, but there's a particular type of index that you can only have one of per table, and then you can create
Mhm.
multiple of the other kind of indexes.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And I'm sorry I don't have
I'm
those
not familiar
exact
with MS SQL
terminologies
that
for
much.
you.
I mean, in Oracle, you can have your major key indexes, which can have several different fields combined as that key. You create an index with those keys involved. And it
Oh, I
creates an
guess
index.
let me ask about this then. This database structure, is this connecting to an external database or the one that
No, it's
Decisions is
not.
running on?
I'm pulling it over from our external database, and I'm only pulling it over like once a week. That's why I don't want to be connecting to that external database each time a person's on the form. I want that local because that would be a lot, lot
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be the MS SQL database that Decisions is running on. I'm just not quite sure about how indexes work on that. I can look it up and see. Not
You
sure
can
how
absolutely do that. You can
Decisions
create on the database level or you can create it here as Jared was showing.
does it. Okay.
Yeah, that is probably
Cool.
a good ChatGPT question. It's like it's
Yeah.
a little above
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely look that up because that's something I need to know going forward.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll try it both ways and see if I get a performance increase by just putting a simple index on that. And see what happens.
Awesome.
I think that's all
Alrighty. Anyone else? Shane Key, do you have any questions? Sweet. I'll let you talk and I'll read your question. Hello, I have a question. When I load an Excel file into Decisions, I set all the columns as string, and now I need to check the format of each field. My team member has an example which using list mapping step in the flow, another data structure is defined in which some are decimal and some are date. Do I need to verify the format of the values before mapping, or it will automatically be converted into the corresponding type? So if you have an Excel file in Decisions and you load it, sets all the columns as string, okay, naturally. Now you need to check the format of each field. Do you know which step you're using? Oh, wait, so you're using list mapping. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the list
Got
mapping.
it. Yep, I'm with you. So let's kind of build that.
Actually, initially they in the example they load all the data into the database into a temporary table, which all the column is defined as a string to make sure all the information is loaded in. Then the second step, the second flow, they are fetch the data from the database, then retrieve then using the list mapping to convert into the different list, which is defined as they have decimal, have dates, these kind of things. So I'm just wondering, in case the original table have the data quality is not so good, there is some column which contains the letters instead of a pure decimal. Is it the is this way will pop up the error, or I need to verify first.
So what would happen is, so let's say I'm doing this. So I'm going to utilize this because this is most likely what you'd have. And if you have an object, and let's say I'll make this to actually cause an error so you can kind of see what that interaction is. Basically, if you have a column that does not match a data type, then it will throw an error. And Decisions will do its best to try to correspond and map those fields into it. So let's say I create a flow structure in my data data structures folder, and I'm gonna create this and just call it a flow structure, and this is my test FS, and I'll say this is my string prop, right? This one probably won't have a lot of issues. This one's my int32 prop, which let me spell out int32 prop. And then this one might have issues, and then say this is my decimal prop. And then we'll say this is the date prop. Right, I think the one that would have the most issues would be the date prop. So for example, if and we'll say this is decimal, cool. So then we'll save this. Let me sit down. All right, cool. And so now if I go back into my flows and I go into the Excel file stuff, and I have an Excel file, so I'm gonna go ahead and download this Excel file. Oh, sweet, it's in my documents. So I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna close this. Let me grab my documents, and I should have a book one. I do. Oops. I want to put this in. Come on. It was going so fast and then just slowed down on me. There we go. And so then if I go here and then I drag this book SLS, put that in there. The output type is going to be test FS. Come on. Save this. I think I have too much stuff loaded on my computer. I'm at 93% memory. So let me kind of remove some stuff. Probably doing too much. So yeah. And then now let's do it. There we go. Output type. Finally, recent. And test FS. And I do this. And so now if I show the item mapping editor, I can build that. And I have 4 properties in my Excel file. So I'm just going to map the string prop, this prop, decimal prop, and all this. And I believe the ones that are going to error out are, oh, okay, not valid. Okay, cool. So for this part, what you'd have to do, let me go ahead and just make it linear and not do it reverse. So if I do this one, you can drill down into the field and say like, hey, I want to drag the, you know, for this one, it would be the date value. So I can say, hey, I want to drag the date value in, and then that will set it up okay. Then I want to drag for the decimal property, expand the field, and then you can say, I want the number value for the decimal property, right? And you can do this all the way into the entire file. Now, if you have, like I have parts of the file, let me see if I can show you that file. It's just raw text. Let's see. Come on, that wasn't the one I did. Let's save documents. Where is it? Come on. This one. There we go. Haha, found it. This one. Now I want to show you guys that. So let me go to open. So here's the file, right? It's just data 1, data 2, data 3, and it's all just random string text from that point. So if I run this, what's going to happen is it's not going to like it because it cannot map that value inside of it. I think it's the wrong one. It's actually this one. And then I debug it, it's going to error out because it can't map in the values. Boom, perfect. And it's going to tell you that, hey, it failed processing row 0, could not get date value on cell value. So if you do have things that fail, that don't match from a data type level, it'll say it failed to convert value AFD, right? So going back to my file, AFD, So I can look at my file and I can say, okay, where's AFD? Cool, I got AFD. And then it says it failed to convert it into on-field data 1, right? So that's the field that to date. So it's trying to convert AFD to a date and it failed, which makes sense because it's just text. So those are the types of errors that you can have if the data types don't match. But if you leave everything as string, and let's say you have some dates and some things from a decisions data structure perspective, then decisions will just map whatever's in there into that. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. So what I need to do is I need to manually convert the so I need to manually convert the using some converter to convert the stream to the data type which I need.
Only if it doesn't match. Like for example, if I have, if I go back into my data and let's say I change this data, right? Let's say this data actually is a date, right? And I say this is 1, 3, or 4, 2901, right? Let's say we're going really far in the future. And I'm gonna make all of this, right? So now it's going descending of that year. So let's say all of data 1 is that, and I'm just gonna make all of these kind of blank for the sake of demonstration, right? So this is all text. I'm hitting the wrong thing. Stop! Don't! Cease! Desist! I was hitting the wrong button. Right, so perfect. I have all this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that file with that updated version. And so now since everything else doesn't have any information and just that one does, when I add it back in here, it will convert those dates into that date, as you can see here. And when I look at my output, it's going to say, hey, cool, we got 2901 January 1st of 9 into the date prop. So decisions can take text and convert it into the data type. However, you just got to be aware that that text is actually in the format it's expecting for a date or a number or things like that. So you won't need to do anything special.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
So it's also added the time as well, not only the date, add actual information.
Exactly, add the time as well, but because I only provided a date, that's why you can see it doesn't have, the time is 000000.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
I had a quick follow-up if no one else is asking.
Go right ahead, James.
You mentioned on going back to the error handling, that like active form flows and certain subflows wouldn't recognize it if you put it in the project error handling.
Yeah, well, it would recognize it. It just wouldn't appear that it does.
So it would kick it off. What do you mean it
Right.
wouldn't appear then?
So for example, when you have a scheduled job and it fails, it will tell you that it fails. So let's go to my scheduled jobs here. I think it's activity. Nope, it's not activity. Configurations. Jobs. It's a jobs event. Scheduled jobs. Your job will tell you if it failed, right? The failed count.
Right.
Because it actually has another flow to run, it won't say it failed. It just ran the error, the flow that is residing in the error handling. So it give you the illusion that it's fine because it ran the errors, the error handling flow,
Oh,
and this report won't show you, hey, it actually did
okay.
fail.
Okay,
So
so it actually will fail and go through the error handling. It just, if you run this
exactly.
report, it won't show.
There's
It won't
there's
look like it.
inconsistencies. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, well, if we're not utilizing that report for that, like, because what we did is we took the error handling that was written in the example labs for the
Mhm.
modules, whatever they are.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're using that and it does all the assignment of, who gets this error and all that. So that's all gonna happen still, right?
exactly.
So
It
if you're
still
running
runs
your
that flow.
reports based on that, then you're good.
Correct, yes. Nothing's gonna change in regard to that project or how the thing functions. It's just kind of like
Gotcha.
there's parts in the system that should trigger to let you know that the error happened, that just won't. But, you know,
Okay.
if you have your error handling flow running it, then you'll still have those in the add tasks.
Okay, okay. All right, well, that's good then.
Mhm.
And you guys are working to fix that
Correct.
part there, right? So that'll
hmm
be out in a while. Okay. I don't think that should stop us from doing the error handling.
Correct. Yeah, it's not a big work. It's not a stoppage of don't use this feature. It's more of just, hey, just be aware if
Mhm.
it may make troubleshooting something a little more difficult. But as
Right,
you said, if
if
you
you're
don't
using
really
these types of things to do that, right? These
exactly,
reports
yeah.
right here. Right.
Yeah, we have some customers that they rely on it heavily because they have a ton of different scheduled jobs and have to
Mhm.
run to gather metrics. And
Sure,
so,
sure,
you know,
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And if it applies to user interactions, should we stay away from it for now, or?
The users wouldn't be looking at that, Marty.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but are there,
Because
if
like,
an exception happens with a flow that's part of a user interaction, are they gonna see the error or not?
That would be regard to that deals with the whatever the flow you have running the project level flow. So if you have a notification there that notifies the user, that's still gonna happen. So it wouldn't interfere with that.
Okay,
yeah,
and that's it stopped, you can't go any farther, it's don't pass go, don't collect $200, kind of stop. Okay,
I mean, yeah, if it's a hard exception it's gonna throw, it'll stop the flow anyway.
Mhm. Correct.
It's just, yeah, so now I get it. You're just saying that, some of these, metadata tables aren't getting updated correctly,
Exactly. Yeah.
when it happens through the.
okay,
Correct. Yeah. It's
Okay.
not a functional, like it doesn't run. It'll still function.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. So Shinky asks, now I have a task to do the format check for input values. For example, there are 10 columns, our decimal, 2 our date, how to create a loop to check each column and do a specific format check. You're trying to do it via an automated way.
Yes.
You could probably do like a regex or something if you have a certain columns you want to check to determine it.
Yeah.
That probably might be the best way if I go. Because there's also different steps. Oh man, what was the step you were messing with, James, last time that we did this with? You can grab all the first. I think we were just creating Excel files, weren't we? At that point, we weren't really doing anything.
Yeah, there are steps that check like, a string and says, is it numeric, is it this? I didn't see one that really tells if it's a date though, but it
Yeah.
probably is. But you could just run each field on that Excel through a series of steps and determine what value's in there. What type of value.
Yeah. I feel like what you could probably do. Because then at that point, I'm trying to think of what would be the best way to do that. It's almost like I would say you might have to just create a data type from a data structure at that point. But you still
Yeah,
have to
once you
map the
determine
values
what it
in.
is, you'll have to determine what you're gonna do with it, once you figure it
Yeah.
out as it comes in.
Yeah. So if I have a chance to form input values, 10 columns are decimal. Are the 10 columns and the 2 columns always going to be the same? They'd have to be. Right,
I
Shane?
mean,
So like,
which,
I'm trying to understand the use case because, so for example, my data 1 is always going to be the date field.
Yeah.
That's never going to change. So let's say I have 10 values. Let's kind of build this out together, right? 6, 7, and let's say we'll just do 8, right? 2 of them are date fields. These are number fields, right? I'm gonna go all the way up for here. This one is a decimal field, right? You know, I'm gonna say 305 or 360, 343, right? and we'll just make all those the same. So your columns are always gonna stay the same. So when I change it, all I have to do is say in here in the show item mapping editor, it's always gonna be field 1 is always gonna be the date field. And field 2 is always gonna be the integer or the number value. And then my field 3 is always gonna be the whichever value. And so you just map those in. I don't think we'd, unless, you know, you have unless, I don't know your specific use case, but I don't think the columns are necessarily going to change. Where like column 11 will be the decimal field. And column 1 will be a date field, and then next time it's 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what I plan to do is, okay, there are so many rows. Yeah, the column is defined. There is a 10 decimal 2 date.
Mhm.
It could be even, it could be more than 88. Or could be down, and more than 100. So,
Mhm.
So if I put one step to check the format, then I will kind of like, I will need to put 100 steps, flow steps to do the check. Or is that the way to?
Well, right, and that would be complicated. That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't have to do the check because once you know that column 1's always the date field, column 2 is always the integer field. So then I will look at my file. I will know what all those values are, and then I can set it accordingly, right? So I can say, okay,
Okay.
cool. Date 1 is always going to be a date. Another thing you can do is you can say, hey, I actually want to create a flow structure that's all strings. I'll show this to you too.
Structure.
Yeah, so if I create a flow structure that now, let's say these are all strings. Right, and then let's say this is, I'm just saying this is just, you know, prop 2, darn it, that's not what I want. Google, I don't need your help. I'm doing just fine, thank you very much. Then if I do prop 4, right, so now these are all strings. So now it doesn't even matter what my data looks like in regard to the type, because when I run this, and let me grab the, you know, I'm just gonna map all the values to it. So this one is here, this one's here. And was it this one? Sure, we'll put here. And what you'll see here is as I debug that file now, I think I didn't update it. Let me update it real quick. Book XLXX. And then I run it. It automatically will just then put the data, right? Prop 1 is in 343.1. Looks like I had nothing in the string prop field here. So that's why that's empty. But it just came in that, and they're just strings. And then I can convert, you know, I can do whatever I need to with converter flows on the other end. So let's say I'm passing this into another step. And we're going to say this is decimal. I'll say this is number dec. Right? And then what I can do, if I run this, it's probably going to error out. But if I run this, and I know that prop 3 is a decimal, right? And then I say this is, oh, I didn't save it, number dec. Save. And since I know prop 3 is a decimal, I can go out here, I can say, hey, I want the first record and I want prop 3. And it'll say, hey, you're expecting to type decimal. I can say, okay, no worries. I have a converter that I can convert a string to a decimal. And then I can select from flow in a mapping thing. And then say, cool, I want prop 3 because that's going to be the string that I need to convert. And then when I change this here and I debug it, what's going to happen here is now that I have, boom, now it's a number that I can do mathematical computation on. So you won't
Okay.
have to do a crazy flow to check it.
Okay, instead of converter, can I just run a flow which will do the check, format check?
A format check?
Yeah.
What would be the purpose of the format check? Because here with this CSV to object mapping editor, we have all the data. Like I didn't have to check the data. I was able just to say,
Yeah,
boom,
because
we got it.
for example, I expected a decimal, but because of some typo, the people putting some two dots there, so it is not I need to tell the loading log said, okay, this data is not in the right format, please check it.
Ah, okay. I see what you're saying. So then, yeah, so what I would do in that circumstance is set everything as a string. So you can pass it out regardless. And then there is a regex check, regex. Was it regex match? And then you can have it detect and you can loop through all of the different. So I have a flow structure. I could say, hey, for each of the flow structure, boom, right here. And let's say I wanted to do something. I'm just gonna loop it back here. And then sure, they'll hit this. Let me go back here.
And while he's building, I just want to say I did put it in the chat. I have a video on all of this CSV to object mapping stuff I made a couple days ago. And it covers essentially what we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes and a little bit of a slower motion. So I did add it to the chat. That's what that YouTube link is. It's all about CSV to object mapping and how to go from a spreadsheet into decisions object.
Yep,
Thank you.
Yep, so the next thing you can do is I can regex now match the individual properties. And I can say, hey, I want to go through this list. And I want to check, let's say, I can check all of it. And then I have access to the individual properties. But I can say, hey, for this one, I want to check because people always mess up property 4. It should be in a date format. And since I'm not a regex expert, I'm just going to go chat GPT and just say, can I get stay logged out? Regex to check if a string is in a date format. And then I'm going to go ahead and get that. Perfect. And now I got the regex for, I think it's this one. And I got a couple from ChatGPT and I can paste that in here. So that's the pattern I need to check for. And then when I run this, we can see what happens. Run 7 times, so none of them match that regex pattern. So that'd be a way you could do it because it's not in the, because it's got the, that, what do you call it? That timestamp. So I can figure out how to get, date and time with it. And then I can see if it matches that pattern. So that would be the a way you can do that if you want to see if people have messed up some specific pieces of data. Did that answer your question?
Yes, answer part of my question. Yeah, I think the Rex, I will try it, see whether it works for my task. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. It sounds like what I would recommend is you probably want to maybe get it on submit a support ticket so that you can share your screen and show the data you're looking at. Because from the question, it sounds like it's more of a procedural or like question that maybe we can help in a different way approaching this problem differently. Because I know in Excel, like if you want to check certain data or enforce certain rules with Excel, you could say like, hey, this column can only take it in this format. And then the data is already formatted before it gets to decisions, and then your process would be more efficient.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you for the question.
If we have a little time, I have a follow-up to what is the form steps form control. I got an answer from one of our developers. And yeah, it's very similar to the horizontal timeline where it's just designed to process track what's going on, what steps you're on. And would you mind if I shared my screen to actually display something real quick?
Please. Go right ahead.
Cool. Because funny enough, you all have probably actually seen a use of it before, which is in the installer. This little thing on the left is one of the form steps, form controls that displays and points to each part of the application as you're going through it.
Oh, interesting.
That is nice. So that's basically mimicking, a lot of the way forms are presented online nowadays. with
Mhm.
the side menu there. So, wow. So how does it get, when you select one of those, it obviously brings up another form over on
Right.
the right. How does that connect? Because I didn't see where that connects in there, how that happens.
My guess is that it would be used for like in the back end, like you've got something that's updating it dynamically based on what page or tab or part of it is being displayed. Because it doesn't look like it's the form, it's not the control itself that dynamically updates. You'd have to configure that logic on the back end.
Okay, so the logic would just pick up what selection was made and then throw up whatever it needed to on that right-hand side there.
Exactly, because you can input the list of them and the selected
Right.
item.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, I'm gonna play with that because that's pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all I got
Definitely
on
different than,
that.
cool. Thanks.
Yeah, that doesn't look like it's a required linear process either, so
Mm-mm.
that you might need to take that
It's
into
just for menus.
consideration. Right,
It's just for menus. Like if you had a menu options and they could select any one of them, it doesn't matter which
sure,
one.
sure,
That would be useful for that type of thing.
right.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think it's a good time to wrap it up. So thank you so much, guys, for attending our Lunch and Learn. Tomorrow, Jeremy will be running the Lunch and Learn. Please join for that one. That'll be a fun one to learn from. And then we'll also upload all the questions and the recording once we get the mix of that video. So, alrighty. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.